It is 6 p.m. here in Cairo. Time for the news bulletin, and we will be starting straight away with the main headlines. Gaza's civil defense says the Israeli strikes kill at least 15. The Kurdish PKK fighters to begin disarming at the key ceremony. And the Russia Defense Ministry says it intercepted 155 Ukrainian drones overnight. Gaza's Civil Defense Agency said that the Israeli occupation strikes killed at least 15 people, including 5 at the shelter in the Palestinian territories north. Nearly all of the Gaza population has been displaced at least once during the war, which has created dire humanitarian conditions for the more than 2 million people living there. The Civil Defense Agency also reported 2 people killed in separate strikes in Gaza City and the city of Khan Younis. The Israeli occupation said that the troops had killed. The Israeli occupation forces media said that an Israeli man was killed in the occupied West Bank, adding that the 2 Palestinians were shot dead. The occupation army said that the troops killed 2 people, claiming that they launched a shooting and stabbing attack in Gush Etzion. Earlier, Palestinian authorities said that the Israeli occupation troops killed the 55-year-old man in the northwest bank village of Romana. French President Emmanuel Macron urged a joint UK-France recognition of a Palestinian state, calling such moves the only hope for peace in the region. Flanking UK leader Keir Starmer at the news conference as he wrapped up a 3-day state visit to Britain, Macron said that he wanted to initiate the political dynamic of recognizing the Palestinian statehood. London and Paris also unveiled the pilot program to return to France some of the migrants arriving in the United Kingdom on small boats across the Channel. The United Nations said that nearly 800 people have died trying to access aid in Gaza since late May, with most killed near the United States and Israel-backed Gaza Humanitarian Foundation sites. The United Nations also managed to bring 75,000 liters of fuel into Gaza, the first in 130 days. The UN Secretary General's spokesman made the announcement, noting that it was still far from enough to alleviate the shortages in the territory. He warned that the crucial services will shut down if more fuel does not enter Gaza immediately. Lebanese President Joseph Aoun ruled out the normalization between the country and Israel, while expressing hope for the peaceful resolutions with Beirut's neighbor, which still occupies parts of southern Lebanon. Aoun's statement is the first official reaction to the Israeli Foreign Minister Gideon Saar's statement last week, in which he expressed his country's interest in normalizing ties with Lebanon and Syria. 30 PKK fighters destroyed their weapons at a ceremony in Iraqi Kurdistan, 2 months after the Kurdish militants ended the armed struggle against the Turkish state. At the disarmament ceremony, which took place in a cave in the mountains of northern Iraq, a first batch of 30 militants were seen burning their weapons. Throughout the morning, cars could be seen pulling up to the cave, a symbolic location that once housed the Kurdish printing press. Tensions rose ahead of the ceremony as 2 drones were shot down overnight near the Iraqi Kurdish Peshmerga bases, one in Sulaymaniyah and the other in Kirkuk. The United Nations Children's Agency said that the number of severely malnourished children in Sudan's battleground state of North Darfur has doubled since last year. In a statement, the UNICEF said more than 40,000 children suffering from severe acute malnutrition in North Darfur were admitted for treatment between January and May this year, twice as many as during the same period last year. The statement added that across the 5 Darfur states, cases of severe malnutrition rose by 46% in the first 5 months of the year, compared to the same period in 2024. Meanwhile, the Russian Defense Ministry said that the air defense systems intercepted 155 Ukrainian drones in the overnight barrage, adding that at least 2 people were killed by the drones. It said that 53 of the drones were shot down over the Kursk region bordering Ukraine. In Ukraine's Kharkiv region, a Russian strike hit the city of Shuguev early on Friday, destroying 2 private homes, damaging a hospital building, and wounding 3 people. Head of the Kyiv city military administration said that at least 28 people were wounded in the Russian shelling overnight. The European Union said that it deeply regrets the U.S. decision to impose sanctions on the United Nations expert Francesca Albanese after she criticized Washington's policy on Gaza. Earlier, the U.S. Secretary of State Marco Rubio announced Washington was sanctioning the UN special expert on the Palestinian territories following the criticism of Washington policy on Gaza. The UN warned that Washington was setting a dangerous precedent by imposing the sanctions and called for the cancellation of the action. United Nations Rights Chief Volker Turk also called for a halt to the attacks and threats against the people appointed by the UN and the international institutions like the International Criminal Court, whose judges have also been hit with the American sanctions. The top military chiefs of South Korea, the United States and Japan met in Seoul as the U.S. President Donald Trump piles pressure on Washington's allies over defense spending and trade. They discussed growing military ties between Moscow and Pyongyang, which has sent weapons and thousands of troops for the Russian war in Ukraine. The 3 military chiefs said in a statement that the talks covered the potential transfer of the military technology from Russia to the DPRK. Separately, the 3 countries conducted joint air drills over South Korea's southern island of Jeju. Thousands of mourners commemorated in Srebrenica the genocide committed 30 years ago by Bosnian Serb forces, one of the European worst atrocities since World War II. The remains of 7 victims were laid to rest during the commemorations, which marked the bloodiest episode of Bosnia's inter-ethnic war in the 1990s. On July the 11th of 1995, after a siege of more than 3 months, Bosnian Serb forces captured the town, which was at the time a UN-protected enclave. So far, about 7,000 victims have been identified and buried, while about 1,000 are still missing. The U.S. President Donald Trump was set to visit Texas as the questions mounted over the response to flash floods that have left at least 120 people dead, including dozens of children. The details follow.
The Texas flash floods death toll rose to 121 as waters grew. The figures could more than double, with over 160 people still reported missing. Hundreds of workers in Carroll County and other central Texas communities continue to come through piles of the muddy debris. With U.S. President Donald Trump preparing to visit disaster zone with First Lady Melania Trump on Friday, new questions have emerged about when the first emergency alerts reached the hundreds of people in the path of the nature's fury. Several local and state state officials in recent days have deflected questions that sought to clarify Kerr County's specific actions as the disaster rapidly unfolded. The tragedy's epicenter and the part of an area nicknamed Flash Flood LA has confirmed 97 deaths, including 36 children, with 161 people still missing. The reporters pressed area officials this week about whether the Trump government's sweeping funding cuts had weakened warning systems and why so many people did not receive timely flood alerts. The flooding of the Guadalupe River was particularly devastating for summer camps on its banks, including Camp Mystic, where 27 girls and the counselors died. 5 other Mystic campers and a counselor remain missing. Governor Greg Abbott had scheduled a special session of the Texas legislature beginning July 21st, with ABC reporting it will discuss improving warning systems for weather events.
Stocks were mixed as the investors cautiously watched the trade developments as the U.S. President Donald Trump's latest tariff salvos tempered the optimism that most countries will strike a deal to avoid the worst of his levies. Wall Street stocks dipped, while London hit a record high. The dollar climbed versus main rivals, while the oil prices slid. Asia started on a strong note but lost momentum as they progressed. Hong Kong, Singapore, Taipei, Bangkok and Jakarta rose, while Tokyo, Sydney, Seoul, Manila, Mumbai and Wellington fell. The French Football Federation said that 7-time French champions Lyon have kept the Ligue 1 place after winning an appeal against relegation. Last month, Lyon were relegated to the second-tier Ligue 2 by French football's financial watchdog, who had placed the club under restrictions in November. The FFF said that Lyon would have to cut the wage bill and transfer budget for the upcoming campaign. Lyon finished 6th in Ligue 1 last season to qualify for the Europa League and will be allowed to play in that competition after the successful appeal, but they had already agreed to pay UEFA a fine. And the La Liga club announced that Argentina's Ángel Correa will join Mexican side Tigres from Atletico Madrid. Correa, who joined Atletico in 2015, had already said that he would leave the team after the Club World Cup, where Diego Simeone's men were knocked out in the group stages. Correa scored 88 goals in 469 games for Atletico, placing him amongst the club's top 10 appearances makers. And this brings us to the end of the news bulletin for now. Thank you for watching and goodbye.